Hi, I'm Jozef Kostecki for WD Sportz, and I'm here with Neil Smythe of #United. Neil, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, mate. Yeah, you call me at a good time. We've just launched our latest video, so yeah, I always like video day.
The video day's big day.
Yeah, well, it's the Academy series. This episode is the one where the Academy trialists get to play our first team,
Mhm.
and it was a tasty affair. So yeah, I
I'm sh-
like it. I love seeing all the comments come in, especially when a video is new. It gives you that instant feedback.
mhm. I'll be sure to watch it. I'll catch up because that'll be episode 4. I'll catch up on that once we're done here. Then I'm going to pull back the curtain to start off with. As originally, I had a few questions drafted on what did you know for how this season will go? Because obviously it was postponed indefinitely, and but after the news promotion, how are you feeling?
Yeah, great. In fact, I'm missing out on a bit of a celebration today. Some of the boys are getting together outside and having a few drinks, but I live an hour away, so I can't make it. Yeah, how do we feel? Great. I mean, being honest, we expected it. Certainly, since we put our application in, we hadn't heard back that there were any issues with it. And given that we had what I think the third best points per game in the country, it would have been a travesty if we hadn't have gone up.
Mhm.
But that being said, nobody counted any chickens, so we were a little bit nervous. But yeah, it's fantastic, and it's what the boys deserve. I mean, what I do has no impact, obviously, on the results, or no direct impact. But for Devs and the boys to pick themselves up after the season that was voided initially last year, to pick themselves up and then fight their way to the top of the league again this year just shows what mental strength they've got, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, I suppose on a personal level, the promotions put a smile back in your face after Oxford United they didn't do so well in the playoffs, did they?
Well, it was the other way around actually. I was high after the promotion. I tweeted out, "Look, can we make it a double?" And yeah, I
3-0
didn't
loss.
expect to lose 3-0. Being honest, if we're talking Oxford, um, I think most Oxford fans would say to you that we didn't expect to be in this position given we were in the relegation zone in November.
Mhm.
So to have taken the season down to almost the last day is incredible. And we have a lot of tenacity. The Oxford boys have a lot of tenacity. I can't see us turning that 3 goals around tomorrow.
Mhm. So on March 19th, they turned 5 years old. You
Mm.
joined 2 years into the project. Why hashtag? Because you worked at Soccer AM, Copper 90. I believe you left Formula E to come to hashtag. Why hashtag? Why, what was the reason?
Two reasons, I guess. One, I knew Spen. Spen worked with me at Copper 90.
Mm.
So I'd kept a close eye on his career. In fact, I tried to hire him when I was at Fremantle, and he said, "No, you're right, mate. I'm doing okay on my own." So I tried to hire Spencer, and in fact, I did work with Saunders, his brother. I
Mm.
hired him a couple of times. So I'd kept an eye on what hashtag we're doing, and in fact, one of their first games, I think their first 11-a-side game, was against the team that I'd created at Football Republic. So against my team. So I was there on probably the first real hashtag game. So I knew what they were doing, and I admired what they were doing from afar. Um, and yeah, a combination of having a lot of respect for Spencer and a huge amount of respect for the project. They came to me at the right time, really. I,
Mm.
I was loving the job I was doing at Little Dot Studios for Formula E, but traveling the world took its toll. I mean, it would have been a dream job 15 years ago, but I've got a family and I was heading to races all over the world every 2 or 3 weeks. So, um, yeah, it came at the right time, and I've been there 3 years now, and it's flown, and I certainly don't regret joining.
With hashtag now being 5 years old, what do you think that says to anyone who may have thought originally the club was just a flash in the pan and they'd be gone within 6 months, a year, 2 years?
Well, in the first couple of years, I don't really think people were thinking that because it was an exhibition side, and I guess people hadn't really seen the like before, so it was still really fresh, and the
Mm.
narrative that they were creating was really exciting. And so I don't think people were saying that the first 2 years. People certainly said that when we moved into the non-league pyramid. There was certainly an element of the public that thought we'd get bored, we'd give up, we wouldn't take it seriously. Now, it was frustrating to read that. And I tried addressing the comments because I'm the community manager as well. I tried explaining that wasn't going to happen. But I guess it took a while for us to show that it wasn't going to happen.
Well, actions speak louder than words.
Well, exactly that. But anyone who knew us, anyone who knew Spencer, knew that we wouldn't let go because it was his dream, and he takes things very seriously and is very competitive. Anyone who knew Devs knew it couldn't happen because he was a man who has spent most of his career in non-league football and has been instrumental, not just on the pitch, but in guiding us in the ways of the non-league world, if you like. And there was no way he was going to let us take it anything less than seriously. So it was just a question of proving them wrong, I guess. And still to this day, some people don't like our name. Some people don't like the fact that we're young in terms of a club, but everyone's got to start somewhere. And all I can say is, if you come to a game, you'll understand how seriously we take it.
Yeah, it's I've heard Spencer say before how that's part of the name. It's meant to be hated almost. It's a talking point, but everyone has to start somewhere, and why not start where you did? You know, it's a perfect time for it, and look how far you've come.
Yeah, there is that. And there's also the fact that he says a lot that if you go back to when football clubs started, 100, 120 years ago in some cases, generally they were either formed as local community clubs or they were clubs around workplaces, right? So some teams, I guess Arsenal to an extent, and Manchester United started, I think, as a railway club. Their genesis was workplaces. The genesis of this essentially is a modern workplace, internet, hashtag. It kind of fitted. Yeah. It's just that people are so used to seeing these football club names that may have changed over the last 100 years that ours seemed really out there and different, but it's not really if you look at the history.
Yeah. I listened to a podcast that you featured on with Richard Clark 3 years back when you first joined. And I thought one of the biggest things I took from it was when you joined, you had this 10-year plan in place. And you said, like, there's obviously the obvious parts as a women's team and a youth up. You've now done that, presumably ahead of time. How do you feel on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we ever had it written down. Well, Spencer might have done, but it was never a short-term project. And so had you asked me to pin it down 3 years ago, I probably would have said women's team, youth team, promotion, all within the first 3 years, which is what we've done. Mm-hmm. Personally, and look, I don't run the club, but I'm in the inner circle. I would have said that within 10 years, we want our own home. And that is definitely on the roadmap for the next 5 years. So we're well on the way. I think the next step for us, obviously, with the men's team, the next step really is finding our feet in what's a much bigger league. We already know a much tougher league, number one. Number two, really growing our roots in the local area. And because we haven't really had a chance to do that in the last year. We haven't really had a chance to go out to the community of Basildon and try and show them what we can do because of COVID. So I think that's going to be a priority over the next couple of years. Growing the profile of the women's game and of the women's club, I think is really important for us. So we've achieved a lot, and a lot of that is down to Spen and his vision, because a year ago when COVID hit, we could have contracted as a club, but we expanded, and that's what Spencer does. He doesn't do the obvious.
Yeah, well, that league you've been promoted to, it's actually it's my local league. So Bury Town, who you'll be playing, that's where I was born. That's Bury St Edmunds. So that's quite a thing for me. I know, like, you'll be down my way as long as I'm back from home. So that's quite interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's a league that probably takes us further afield again. The Essex Senior was quite a tight league in terms of travel. Yeah, this takes us up to the East Coast.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic visiting these new places. I mean, I was never a non-league fan, actually, before this. Not that I didn't like it. I just wasn't aware of what it would do to my life. And the minute I started traveling to these little towns that I'd never visited before and visiting clubs that meant so much to the community, I personally fell in love with the game, and I just love going to these places, especially if we can come away with 3 points.
When you come Berryway, I'll have to point out the best place for you then.
Yeah. No, I'm looking
Yeah,
forward to it.
yeah, it's a lovely place. It's funny you mentioned about the stadium, because Spencer said the same thing 2 days ago, and how it's definitely on the agenda, but it wasn't as easy as it might seem from the outside looking in, just to secure a stadium. I don't suppose you could expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, well, I didn't actually listen to all of that stream because it was my mum's birthday, so I was half listening. Yeah, I'm not sure how much more I can add. I mean, the fact is, to build a stadium from scratch costs more money than we have. Right? That's
the obvious part.
That's not saying anything.
No.
So you're looking for a stadium that is currently owned by someone else, right? But then you're looking at, well, we don't want a ground share, which is what we've got. We've got an amazing ground share with Bowers. They're amazing landlords, and in fact, so are Tilbury. But that's not ultimately what we want. We want to part own a ground. So who's going to give up that ownership? Well, not very many. Can we convert an existing pitch into a stadium? Possibly. But if you know the Essex area, there aren't that many plots that are available or in the right state to make it worthwhile, right? So it's not as easy as it sounds. If someone gives us £5 million, we'll build a stadium, and you can name it, right? And you can put it to a certain extent where you want, but it's not as easy as that.
You mentioned the Academy series earlier. I know a lot of people involved in the club, that's their favourite series. Is it yours?
Is it mine? It's one of them, for sure. I mean, one of the frustrations is once the league season starts, it's actually really hard to create anything, certainly on YouTube, that isn't match related. So once the season starts, it's kind of it's match week in, week out. And we try, but it's really hard. So our series, our formats are few and far between. And I suppose it's one of the best known ones. I think it's great because it does give us a chance to stretch our legs editorially. It's a challenge, a different challenge. But also it bolsters the strength of the club's team. So on one hand, we're able to produce better content. On another hand, we're able to strengthen the team. And there aren't that many pieces of content that do both things at the same time. Personally, I was really proud of the documentary that we put out a few months back, even though it didn't attract massive views, which wasn't really the point, because there are stories to be told about this football club that we're not able to tell on a normal video. So I loved that, and it was almost all one man's work. I mean, I helped, but Danny created most of it. I'm frustrated that we couldn't tell the story in the way we wanted to,
right?
Because of COVID. It's contracted the series more than we wanted to, but given a fair wind, and a healthy country, hopefully the next series or the next part of the Academy series will be a bit more how we initially planned it, because we wanted to dip back into, the history for what history we've got, and tell the story of hashtag a bit at a time in a different way. So hopefully you'll see that this year.
You said how obviously it's quite difficult to put out content when the season's going. In a way, because of COVID, this hasn't been the off season non-stop, but obviously games can't be played.
Mm.
But with that, you've had the Pro Clubs Invitational, which had huge names in like Aspilicueta, Chelsea Grimes, Ian Sterling. That was at the start of lockdown. There's Breaking the Net, and then all of that, and now the Academy, amongst others. Do you pride yourself on still keeping that bar of content at a very high standard, where others perhaps could have let COVID, I think, excuse to let it slip almost?
Well, yes, I do, and so does Spen. And Spen's my boss, and he's one of the few people I've met in over 20 years in the industry with possibly even a higher bar than me. Right? Anyone who's worked with me over 20 years knows I like to create pretty professional content under difficult circumstances, but Spen's got an even higher bar than me. So we never allowed to let it slip, but then I wouldn't allow that anyway. Yes, what you've said is true, but also what I say in the documentary is that there was a period during COVID where we stopped. And we stopped not because we were being lazy or because, we were struggling. We stopped because everything we tried just didn't go down with the audience. Not that it went down badly, it's just they weren't watching. And the way YouTube works is a machine. And if the algorithm doesn't like what you're doing because the audience aren't watching, then there's no point doing it, if that makes sense. So the rewards became less and we just stopped making content. Spencer said, stop. The audience want to watch us play football. Just stop. We came back, actually, this period in the spring, we came back with content that's been more popular than anything else. And that was just a silly, but really fun 7-a-side tournament. So look, I think the point is whatever we do, even if it's Zoom call related, even if it's a bunch of mates kicking a ball around for a 7-a-side tournament or a documentary, we take content very seriously. And Spen's had a different content upbringing to me. I was 8 years in a broadcast environment. He came up as a creator in a professional digital environment. And between the two of them, we wouldn't allow standards to slip.
No, I think that's commendable. I think also because of the ingrained background of what hashtag is, it's almost at times allowed you to make the content that, I don't want to say bigger clubs, but you can make the content that Manchester United, Barcelona, Real Madrid never could. And I think a lot of time that's really commendable, and it creates a connection that those big clubs can't necessarily maintain at times.
Yeah, I think to a certain extent. And when I do these things, I always talk about the authenticity and relevance of this new breed of digital content creation, of which we're a part and Copper 90 is a part. I've always stressed that I think football clubs are better now than they were certainly 10 years ago at engaging the audience. And in fact, what I've seen over my time in the digital football world is more established broadcasters or rights owners changing their tone because they see the success of channels like ours and Copper, right? So Manchester United, for example, are now using talent that I hired who were unknown 8 years ago at Fremantle for Full-Time Devils.
Like Statman Dave.
Statman Dave. Yeah. I'm thinking Sam Homewood in particular. Man City did the same. They hired talent we used. Possibly some of the other teams as well.
The original esports player from Man City was from hashtag United, Kes Brown.
Yeah. But also, who am I thinking? Oh God, some of the Spurs talent we used, and God, his name's on the tip of my tongue. Now presents content for England. So the point is, this talent that I've been working with for 10 years in unofficial environments that are now getting recognized by traditional broadcasters and traditional clubs. And I couldn't be happier, but the landscape has shifted a lot. So Man United can make a lot of the content we make. It's just they run more risks every time they do it, right?
Yeah.
I would love to see Manchester United players doing a 7-a-side tournament with YouTubers. It'd be great.
Yeah,
But I see your point.
yeah. Well, I think I do agree with you though. It's more open now. If I look back on what would you see as far as like exciting different content from clubs 15 years ago, you'd maybe see a club pop up for a crossbar challenge on Soccer AM or something like that.
Yeah.
But they were never really pushing the boat out. There was no connection really at times on that level.
No, I just think they were safer. And
Yeah.
I do have to say, I'm still so proud of Soccer AM and how we shifted the landscape back then. Because we saw clubs starting to do teammates style videos or crossbar challenge style videos, and that was down to Soccer AM, undoubtedly.
Yeah, and obviously you were there for a large part of that. 8 years, am I
8
right?
years. Yeah.
I said how I think the main YouTube channel has done very well and it's made really contact. With all due respect, on the contrasting side is the esports channel, which has laid dormant for over a year now.
Yeah.
How do you think you bring it back? What do you think is the next step for that?
Okay, well, you can watch this space because it is coming back.
Mm-hmm.
So what's important to say, I always stress this, is that any success we do have content-wise is down to a small, talented, driven team. But again, with my professional head on, I can see the gaps and I can see where we could do more on certain platforms. But if you ever see us slacking on a platform, there is a reason for it. So there is a reason right now why we're not doing much on TikTok. Not because I don't like TikTok, not because I don't see the value, but we can't do everything. And the same thing applies to the esports channel. One of the things we had to do a year ago with COVID is contract as a team, unfortunately, like most businesses. We unfortunately had to lose Wes, who was not only the manager of the esports team, but also created the content.
Right.
I lost a social media manager as well. So I've been tweeting myself for the last year. More or less anything you see come out of the club at the moment is done by me, which on a social media point of view, which is fine, but I lost that person. We lost 3 members of staff a year ago. And so it was all about where our core content was going to sit. So that's one of the reasons. The other reason is this season's esports scenario, this season's esports competition has all been done remotely.
Right.
So our biggest viewed videos last year were when the boys went to live events. Now, Tom has had an incredible year. And as I speak, he's playing for England. But last year, he would have been all over the world.
Yeah.
And so when we're making these vlogs from Budapest or Paris or Rome or Atlanta, or wherever, they look cool. This time, honestly, it's been Tom and Shuri in the back of our office. So that does make for good content. Now, they've managed to do it on their own channels, which is fine, but we would be replicating more or less what they'd done.
Yeah.
And also, we probably would have been breaking the rules for several months by having another person in their environment. They've been a bubble. So to have somebody filming in that room with them would have been dangerous, right? So those are the main reasons. But what I can say is we are now looking at bringing it back, whether it comes back to coincide with the new FIFA season or whether we get something up and running at the tail end of this. I can't tell you right now, but it is coming back.
Okay. On the topic of Tom, like you said, he's an official Premier League esports athlete, representing England. That's definitely says something about the ability of the esports athletes on the club's book still, and how despite all of this, we're still like the YouTube kind of hitting that high bar.
Yeah. I think there's no point being in esports if you can't compete, unless you're solely a creator. And our brand is almost probably better known in the esports FIFA world than it is in the football world, because Spencer's always front and center of the broadcast, right? So it's really important for us to have at least someone in the team who can compete at a high level regularly.
Mm-hmm.
Tom, we knew last year, was having a fantastic year and was one of the world's best.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, the season got cut short, so he was never able to prove it, apart from winning the Premier League.
Mm-hmm.
This year, he's just gone on from strength to strength. And, if form and consistency was anything to go by, he should be in the top 4 in the world come the end of the season. So fingers crossed. I mean, sure, he's done his bit, but
Yeah.
I think he would admit he's had a difficult season, mainly because he started the season smashing his thumb up playing football for our Sunday League team, which is where we do try and blend the real and virtual football, but that kind of took it a bit too far.
Well, I suppose that's that risk element that, like you said, a Manchester United couldn't necessarily do.
And to be honest, we wouldn't do it with Tom now. I mean, having seen it was sure his decision to play for the Sunday League team, not anyone else's. But I think we've seen what's happened to him, and had that happened to Tom, it would have been a different kettle of fish. So I think his thumb's pretty well insured now.
Yeah, I can remember when Tash was on the books at hashtag. That might have been before you. I'm not too sure. Tash, yeah. He appeared in a couple of the Spencer's videos playing football as well. I can remember that. So I suppose that risk now wouldn't be taken necessarily.
Yeah, well, I guess it's going to depend. But no, I don't think we'd have Tom playing for us. But we have tried to pick players or bring in players who have an interest and some sort of ability in football, because then it does blend more seamlessly with the main team.
Yeah,
trained and what have you.
I was thinking in America, there's a lot of time athletes are almost bigger than the clubs they play for. People follow LeBron James, people follow X, Y, and Z. Do you think that's possible? I'm not sure if it's necessarily possible with hashtag themselves, with the players hashtag, but with the esports players potentially, that could be a thing.
I guess it depends how you're counting, scale, or how you're measuring scale, because you could look at Harry and say he's now bigger than hashtag. Now he is in terms of social reach,
right?
He is in terms of the noise he makes, and I don't mean that negatively, by the way, because I think Harry's great. But he's a different brand, I guess. I don't want to sound sort of all about the business, but he's a different brand to hashtag. And I do think actually in the esports world, it's easier. Sorry, it's my.
Right.
I'll do that sentence again. I do think in the esports world, it's actually easier for individuals to grow than it is for orgs to grow. I know 100 Thieves are massive, Fnatic are massive, and certainly in other esports, the orgs are huge. In FIFA, it seems to be more about the individuals. So that's fine by us. As far as I'm concerned, it's a collaborative environment, and hopefully our athletes and the team can rise together.
Yeah. I was sorry. I had to pause there. I'm sorry. I've really embarrassed. I've lost train of thought. Oh, there it is. Recently on the America the Beautiful podcast, America the Beautiful Game podcast, you said how you believed you were starting to get fans who saw hashtag as their first team. How do you think you could keep growing those numbers?
Well, I was kind of half pushed into that. I've always thought that if we could acquire fans as their second team, then I'd be really happy.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I think if we manage expectations, that's what we're after. I'm not going to ask anybody to stop supporting their other team because of us. I think what we do is so different, and we're playing at such a different level that you can support Oxford and hashtag. So that's really, I think, what I would be after. If somebody wants to come and watch us week in, week out, and forego their league team, then even better. But I'm managing expectations here. So yeah, I think it would be great to attract more fans as their second team. Even if they just casually watch us and comment on YouTube, that's great. That's what we're about. But I think, as I said earlier, one of our focuses over the next few years has to be growing that local fan base who may not want to watch us on YouTube, but want to come to the ground. That's what most football clubs prioritized initially. I'd love to see when things open up 500 fans at Bowers. We had that in our first season at Haringey, and there's no reason why we can't, be one of the best supported teams in the Isthmian League in the next couple of years. That's what I want to do.
Yeah. I was thinking before, one of the ways that you could potentially keep growing is, I think, at the roots of hashtag, you said it before yourself, is that this is one man's dream, and but in through Spencer, but in many ways it's every football fan's dream. Everyone would love to own their own club, and
Yeah.
you could almost steer into the skid there, so people could live vicariously through Spencer and the club almost.
Yeah, oh, totally. And I think we see this in a sort of more obvious light now that we've seen what happened with the Super League. I mean, let's be honest, we all knew it was coming, but the way it was done has made us all think again about what our football clubs think about us as fans. So I could tell you that I think Oxford United have always had a pretty good relationship with their fans, even through tough times with the ownership. I feel part of that club, even though I've never lived in Oxford. I want our fans to feel part of the journey and be part of it. I'm not just saying that. You can come to our game and meet our chairman and meet our players, and we will hopefully always have that open dialogue and open relationship with our fans that, yes, of course you can't have if you're Manchester United.
Yeah.
So yeah, I want our fans to feel like they're on a journey with us.
I think
and it's a crazy journey.
Perhaps the biggest thing that will always separate hashtag and I suppose other teams like maybe SE Dons and Palmers is you can't take away now. We can trace your journey from step one, the very first step that was made. We can see that progress, and that can't be taken away. Whereas other clubs, if you were founded 200 years ago, or you were founded 150 years ago, no one was alive then. What was recorded? This is all recorded. We can follow the progress.
Yeah, you if you're in on the start of hashtag's journey, you are in on the very beginning. If we're still here in 100 years' time, hopefully we are, you were there first. And you're right. There are very few clubs people can say that about. I mean, MK Dons, you could if you wanted to. There are new clubs.
PSG, it'd be one.
Yeah, I suppose so. But actually, I should mention that again, I've got a lot of respect for channels and clubs like Palmers and Dons. What we're doing is not dissimilar. The tone may differ. We're aware of that. Yeah. And the fact that we're in a different league obviously differentiates us. But we're all trying to do the same thing, and we're all trying to engage modern football fans in a more authentic way, I guess. I think what Spen did and Seb actually that was genius initially before I came in was they made sure that every game counted. So, as you know, sounds like you know more about the club than me, but back in those days, even if they were on one level meaningless exhibition games, there was always something at stake because they had this structure, this league chapter structure.
Yeah, I can remember there was the trip to New York that relied on them winning. I think they're winning the last game. I can't perfectly remember, but they had to win because it mirrored the FIFA division setup.
Yeah, so there was always an element of jeopardy, even if it was only us that were going to stitch ourselves up, right? It was an internal league. But that differentiated us from the other YouTube teams at the time who didn't have a league structure, right? I mean, now there are the likes of DTFC and Stretford Paddock, who are in their own leagues, albeit below the pyramid, if you like. But don't get me wrong, in within 5 years, I'd say within 3 years, there will be at least one more YouTube origin team in the pyramid, whether that's DT or Stretford Paddock. Unlikely to be Dons. I mean, I would be putting words in their mouths. I've never met the guys. But as I understand it, Dons, a lot of them play Saturday football for non-league teams anyway, right? So for the Dons to move up would be really hard. And I don't think that's what they do. But for Stretford Paddock or DT, I fully expect them to be in the pyramid in a couple of years' time, as if they were awarded a place. I mean, in fact, DT have just been in the cup run by our league, so they're already really close to the Essex Senior League. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them in step 6 or 7 in a couple of years.
I've got 2 more questions, so I'll give the first one is how did obviously FA Cup run from this year was incredible. How did how did it come about that it was broadcast on BBC? How did that come about?
Well, yes, it was incredible, and I always say that was a reminder to me of the power of a cup that a lot of media and a lot of fans think has gone. That magic hasn't gone.
Yeah.
Ask Marine fans if the magic of the cup still exists, right? It does exist. And it was fantastic. And it was just crazy. It was a crazier ride than even we had imagined. There's what was it, 3 penalty shootouts? Ridiculous. Well, yeah. How did it come about? Simply as it would for any other club. The BBC picked their games for every round. They were only obviously ever going to cover us once, because they can't show a bias. And with my producer's head on, I'm not surprised they picked us, because obviously we were a story. It was our debut season. We were going to attract an audience, and I don't think I'm allowed to say the viewing figures, but they were huge. So I think we did it justice. Again, some fans aimed at us that it wasn't fair, wasn't right. Well, that's up to them. That's their opinion. But I think we gave value for the BBC's money.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last question I'll end it on, because I'm conscious of time. I don't want to take too much. I'm sure you got promotion to carry on celebrating. Is the last episode of Breaking the Net was called Family Club. Is that at its very core what you believe #United is?
Yeah, and in fact, I think it was me was selling that title to Spen. I think in hindsight, it put some people off watching, because with YouTube you always have to be careful about the title and the thumb. So perhaps it hit the video, but maybe it wasn't a sexy enough title. But yes, it's at the core of what we do, and it's one of the reasons I joined. It's one man's dream, but I suppose it's his family's dream. His brother Seb is just as important. In fact, more in some respects, because he brings the deals in that keep us alive. We couldn't survive if we were just living on YouTube AdSense. So Seb keeps us alive and brings an editorial energy. Alex is very much a part of it, even though she's now obviously a full-time mum. Stevie CB is around every game, unpaid as a physio, and Spen's mum, when she's allowed to, is there welcoming guests on the gate. And it will carry on. You can guarantee Spen's boy will be there within a couple of years, as soon as he can walk. So yeah, it's a family business and it's a family club, and I'm proud to be on the outer edges of it. But do you know what? That's the business end of it. But if you ask some of our fans who come with their kids, you would hopefully say that the family club kind of ethos extends beyond that, perhaps to our new youth section. So it's an ethos we're trying to spread throughout the club, and that doesn't make us unique, by the way. But it's what we want to try and get across.
Okay, well, that's absolutely brilliant. Thank you for your time, Neil. You've been absolutely brilliant. Really appreciate it. That's all the questions I've got.
No problems. Well, thanks for speaking to me.